The votive candles flickered in their ruby glass holders, casting dancing shadows across the stone floor of the chapel. My fingers moved through the familiar ritual, lighting each one with precision, the flame catching and holding steady before I moved to the next. The convent was silent now, the other sisters having retired to their cells 20 minutes ago. But I remained for the final preparations, setting the sanctuary ready for tomorrow's special Mass, some visiting cardinal from Rome that had Mother Superior unusually tense. Sister Aneloria, those candles better be properly trimmed. His Eminence expects nothing less than reverence. Sister Beatrice, the sacristan, hovered behind me, her breath smelling of peppermint tea and the honey she took for her persistent cough. I nodded without looking up, and after 8 years within these walls at Santa Maria della Pietà, I knew the liturgical standards better than anyone. I'd started as a postulant, uncertain and grieving, and had risen to assist with the most sacred duties. I wasn't about to let anyone question my devotion. "They're perfect," I murmured, adjusting the final candle. My black habit was damp beneath the heavy fabric, despite the chapel's evening chill. Something about tomorrow's ceremony had everyone moving with extra care, speaking in hushed tones. "Who is this cardinal, anyway?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I straightened, my knees aching from kneeling on the stone floor for the last hour. Sister Beatrice's eyes darted toward the massive wooden doors before she leaned in closer. "Not just the cardinal. There's been a request for sanctuary. They're bringing someone, dangerous. A man from Naples, Raffaele D'Averzano." My heart seized in my chest, and the chapel seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the altar rail to steady myself, hoping Sister Beatrice wouldn't notice how the color had drained from my face. "The Raffaele D'Averzano," I whispered, though I knew the answer. There was only one Raffaele D'Averzano in southern Italy, the man whose name appeared in newspapers linked to violence, the man who controlled half of Naples's port without ever being convicted, the man whose father had destroyed mine. "You look pale. Are you unwell?" Sister Beatrice frowned, studying my face. "Just tired," I managed, forcing calm into my voice. "Long vigil." Sister Beatrice nodded, apparently satisfied. "Well, rest tonight. Tomorrow will require all of us, and I need your steadiness. Mother Superior says church law is absolute. We must grant sanctuary if it's requested. But men like D'Averzano," she crossed herself, "they bring their wars with them." She was right, though she didn't know how right. The stories about Raffaele D'Averzano were numerous and varied, but they all shared one thread. He was a man who had built an empire on violence, and violence followed him like a shadow. I'd known this 8 years ago, when his father's testimony had destroyed my family. When Aneloria Marchetti, daughter of a disgraced politician, had ceased to exist, and Sister Aneloria had been born. I finished my duties in a fog, muscle memory carrying me through the evening prayers, while my mind raced with dread. 8 years ago, I'd fled a world where the D'Averzano name meant power and corruption. I'd watched my father die in prison, my mother succumb to grief, my family name become synonymous with scandal. And when I'd realized what kind of life awaited anyone connected to that world, I'd done what I thought was necessary. I disappeared behind convent walls, took vows of poverty and chastity and obedience, and convinced myself I could find redemption in erasure. For 8 years, I'd lived with that choice. For 8 years, I'd scrubbed floors and prayed the rosary and slept on a narrow cot in a shared dormitory, believing that denying every part of who I'd been would make me worthy of God's grace. For 8 years, I'd convinced myself that the past was dead and buried, and tomorrow, Raffaele D'Averzano would walk through those ancient doors seeking the same sanctuary I'd claimed, and I would have to face the man whose family had destroyed mine. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay rigid on my cot, the thin mattress offering no comfort, my mind cycling through scenarios, each more impossible than the last. By the time the bell rang for lauds at 5:30 a.m., my eyes burned and my head throbbed. "Sister Aneloria." Mother Superior's voice carried across the dormitory. She stood in the doorway, her weathered face grave in the pre-dawn darkness. "He's arrived early. Wounded. He's asking for sanctuary now." My heart stuttered. "Now? But we're not. The law of God doesn't wait for convenience," Mother Superior said, but her eyes held something else. Understanding, perhaps, or warning. "Come. You're needed in the chapel." I rose on unsteady legs, pulling my veil into place with trembling fingers. As I followed Mother Superior down the stone corridor, each step felt like walking toward a precipice. The chapel doors stood open, and through them I could see a figure collapsed near the altar, a man in an expensive suit, darkened with blood. And then he looked up, and I saw his face. Raffaele D'Averzano, the ghost of Naples, the man I'd hated from behind these safe walls for 8 years. His eyes, dark, fierce, desperate, locked onto mine. "Sanctuary," he rasped, the word escaping his lips like a prayer, like a curse, like a prophecy that would bind both our fates to something neither of us could escape. I stood frozen in the doorway, my rosary clutched in white-knuckled hands, because I knew his face from more than just newspapers. I knew it from my father's trial, when a younger Raffaele had sat in the gallery beside his father, cold and untouchable. I knew it from my nightmares, where the D'Averzano name was written in blood. And now he was here, bleeding on the stones where I'd sought my own refuge, asking for the mercy I'd never been able to grant. Mother Superior's hand touched my shoulder. "Sister," she said quietly, "we must help him." The weight of my vows pressed down like chains. The man who had destroyed everything knelt before the altar, waiting for salvation from the woman who had spent 8 years learning how to forgive everyone except him. The man who destroyed her family is bleeding at her altar, and the decision she makes next will cost her everything. Like and subscribe to see what happens when sanctuary becomes a battlefield. The argument erupted in the chapter house within minutes of Raffaele being carried to the spare cell. Sister Beatrice's voice rose above the others, sharp with fear. "Mother Superior, this is madness. The man is a criminal. We'll have his enemies at our gates by sunrise." "Church law is absolute," Mother Superior said, her weathered hands folded calmly despite the chaos. "Any soul who seeks sanctuary must be granted it. This is not a matter for debate." "But the danger," Sister Margarita began. "The danger to our immortal souls is far greater if we turn away someone in need." Mother Superior cut her off, steel beneath the gentle tone. "We are brides of Christ. We do not pick and choose who deserves mercy." I stood at the back of the room, my habit still damp with his blood from helping carry him inside. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every instinct screamed at me to speak up, to join the protests, to demand he be cast out before he brought his war to our doorstep. The daughter of Antonio Marchetti had every right to want Raffaele D'Averzano as far from her as possible. But Sister Aneloria had taken vows. Mother Superior is right. The words left my mouth before I'd consciously decided to speak. The room fell silent, every face turning toward me. If we refuse sanctuary based on someone's sins, then none of us deserve to be here. We've all sought refuge from something. Sister Beatrice's eyes widened. "Sister Aneloria, you can't possibly—" "The law is the law," I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "We don't have the luxury of judgment." Mother Superior studied me for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she nodded. Sister Aneloria will assist Sister Teresa with his care. The rest of you, to your cells. And pray. We'll need God's grace in the days ahead. The sparse cell smelled of antiseptic and copper. Sister Teresa, our elderly doctor, worked with practiced efficiency, cutting away Raphael's blood-soaked shirt to expose the wound in his shoulder. I held the basin of water, trying not to look at his face, at the way pain had carved deep lines around his mouth. The bullet went through, Sister Teresa murmured. Clean. Lucky. Lucky, Raphael repeated, his voice rough with pain, and something that might have been bitter amusement. His dark eyes found mine through the haze of agony. You're the one who spoke for me. I spoke for church law, I said coldly, dipping the cloth and handing it to Sister Teresa. Still. He winced as she cleaned the wound. Thank you. I said nothing. Sister Teresa applied pressure to stop the bleeding, and his jaw clenched, tendons standing out in his neck. But his eyes never left my face. I know you, he murmured, studying me with unsettling intensity. Not from here. From before. My heart hammered against my ribs. You don't. Your eyes. His voice dropped lower, barely audible over Sister Teresa's movements. I've seen them somewhere. I never forget. You're delirious from blood loss, I interrupted, forcing my hand steady as I prepared fresh bandages. You don't know me. You've never seen me before tonight. The lie tasted like ash on my tongue. But Raphael's expression shifted, something clicking behind those dark, calculating eyes. The seed of recognition had been planted, and I knew with cold certainty that it would only be a matter of time before it took root. The first black Mercedes appeared at dawn, not pulling up to the convent gates, just as the bell rang for prime. By the time we finished morning prayers, there were 5 more, arranged in a semicircle that blocked the main entrance. Men in dark suits leaned against the cars, smoking cigarettes, their presence a silent threat that hung heavier than the morning mist. Sister Margarita saw them first from the refectory window. Her breakfast spoon clattered against her bowl. Mother of God. We crowded to the windows. I recognized the insignia on the lead car, a silver lion, the Teresi family, Raffaele's rivals, the ones who'd put the bullet in his shoulder. The phone in Mother Superior's office began ringing before we'd cleared the breakfast dishes. It rang all morning. Each time she answered, her face grew more grave. By noon, she'd gathered us in the chapter house. Her usual serenity cracked at the edges. They're demanding we surrender him, she said simply. They've offered money, a great deal of it. They've made threats. She paused, her hands gripping her rosary. They've cut off our supply deliveries. No food, no medicine. Nothing comes in or out until we give them what they want. How long can we last? Sister Beatrice asked, her earlier fear now vindicated. 2 weeks, perhaps, if we're careful. The room erupted in whispered panic. I sat silent, my mind racing. This was exactly what I'd feared. Raffaele D'Averzano's war bleeding into our sanctuary, threatening the innocent. Every rational part of me wanted to march to his cell and demand he leave. Spare us this siege. But my vows weren't rational. They were absolute. That evening, I carried a tray to his cell. Bread, cheese, water. The meager rations we'd all be surviving on until this ended. Raphael sat propped against the wall, his bandaged shoulder stark white against his skin. He'd recovered some color, though pain still tightened his features. Your friends are here, I said, setting the tray on the small table. Not my friends. He reached for the water with his good hand. The Teresi family wants me dead. There's a difference. Either way, you've brought a war to our gates. I brought myself to God's gates. The war followed on its own. He studied me over the rim of the cup. You don't wear that habit comfortably. It sits on you like armor, not a calling. I stiffened. You know nothing about me or my calling. I know you're young, late 20s, early 30s maybe. Most women your age who take vows do it out of devotion. He set down the cup. But there's something in your eyes, something broken. You're not running toward God, sister. You're running from something else. That's presumptuous, I said coldly. Is it? He leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. What are you hiding from behind these walls? What scared you so badly you chose to bury yourself alive? I chose a life of service and prayer. That's not burial. It is, if you're doing it to disappear. His voice was quiet, but it cut through my defenses like a blade. I've spent my whole life around people running from their past. I recognize the look. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against stone. Eat. Rest. I'll check your bandages tomorrow. What was your name? He called as I reached the door. Before you became Sister Aneloria, what was your name? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because if I said Marchetti, he would remember. And then the fragile lie I'd built would shatter completely. The lights died on the third night of the siege. One moment the convent hummed with electric life. The next we were plunged into medieval darkness. The Teresi family had cut the power lines. Sister Teresa checked on our elderly sisters, while I gathered candles from the sacristy, my hands working by memory in the blackness. Raffaele's cell was at the far end of the corridor, away from the others. I found him sitting upright, tension radiating from his silhouette in the doorway's faint moonlight. "They're escalating," he said as I entered, setting candles on the table. The match flare illuminated his face, hollowed by pain and something deeper, guilt, perhaps, or fear. Why? I struck another match, lighting the second candle. Why are they so desperate to kill you? Surely one crime boss is replaceable. I'm not a crime boss anymore. The candlelight caught the bitter twist of his mouth. That's the problem. I sat in the chair across from him, drawn despite myself. I don't understand. My niece, Juliana, she was 7, his voice roughened. 3 months ago, she was caught in crossfire between my men and a rival crew. A bullet meant for my lieutenant found her instead. He stared at the flame. She died holding a gelato, strawberry, her favorite. The raw agony in his words stole my breath. I looked at her body in that morgue, and I saw every sin I'd ever committed, every order I'd given, every life I'd destroyed. It all led to that moment. To her, lying on steel, still wearing her school uniform. He met my eyes. So I decided to dismantle everything, or turn over evidence, make restitution to the families I'd hurt, burn it all down and maybe find a way to be human again. They want you dead for trying to make amends. They want me dead for betrayal, for threatening their empires with my testimony, for proving that men like us can choose to stop. He laughed, hollow. Redemption is expensive, sister. I'm learning that. My throat tightened. He was seeking the same impossible thing I'd been chasing for 8 years. A way to wash blood from his hands, to become someone worthy of grace. The parallel was unbearable. Your father, I said before I could stop myself. He testified against a politician 8 years ago, Antonio Marchetti. That testimony was supposed to be part of some larger deal with authorities, wasn't it? But Marchetti died in prison before I stopped. The words hung in the air like smoke. Raphael went very still. The candlelight threw sharp shadows across his face as understanding bloomed in his eyes. Marchetti, he repeated slowly. Antonio Marchetti had a daughter. She disappeared after his death. The press said she'd fled the country, couldn't bear the shame. His gaze locked onto mine with terrible precision. But she didn't flee the country. She fled into these walls. My hands clenched in my lap, rosary beads cutting into my palms. "Aneloria Marchetti," he said, and hearing my real name in his voice felt like a physical blow. "You're the daughter of the man my father destroyed. And I've been bleeding in your sanctuary for 3 days, while you—" He shook his head slowly. "The mercy you've shown me. God, the irony." "It wasn't mercy," I whispered. "It was obedience to law." "No." His voice was soft but certain. "Law is easy. Mercy when it costs you everything. That's something else entirely." The candles flickered between us, and I realized my moral certainty had finally, irrevocably cracked. I didn't return to his cell for 2 days. Sister Teresa tended his wound while I threw myself into the most menial tasks, scrubbing floors, hauling water from the well, anything to avoid the conversation I knew was waiting. But on the 5th night of the siege, Mother Superior found me in the chapel after Compline. "He's asking for you," she said quietly. "Whatever is between you and that man, it needs resolution. This convent has become a pressure cooker, Sister Aneloria. We cannot afford fractures among ourselves." So I went, my footsteps echoing in the stone corridor like a countdown. Raffaele was standing when I entered, testing his injured shoulder with careful movements. He'd borrowed a simple shirt from our donation stores. Without the expensive suit, he looked almost ordinary. Almost. "My father testified against yours 8 years ago," he said without preamble. "Antonio Marchetti died in prison 6 months later. Heart attack, the report said. But prison has a way of breaking men before their bodies give out." His eyes held mine. "Your mother followed a year after. Grief, they said. You lost everything. Family, name, future. So you came here and tried to erase Aneloria Marchetti from existence." Each word landed like a stone. "Yes. I'm sorry. The simplicity of it stunned me. For what my family did to yours. For the part I played, even unknowingly. I'm sorry. Your apology doesn't bring them back. No, it doesn't." He moved to the small window, his silhouette dark against the bars. "But you should know the full story. My father didn't volunteer that testimony. He was forced." I stiffened. "That's a convenient revision." "It's the truth," he turned back to me. "The Teresi family, the same ones outside our gates now. They had evidence of my father's involvement in a failed arms deal. They threatened to leak it unless he testified against your father. But that wasn't the real leverage." His voice dropped. "They threatened to kill me. I was 19, arrogant, thought I was untouchable. They grabbed me off the street, beat me half to death, and sent my father photographs." The room seemed to tilt. "No, my father was guilty. The evidence was real. I'm not saying your father was innocent." Raffaele's tone was careful, measured. But he was a pawn in a much larger game. The Teresi family wanted him removed because he'd refused to play along with their real estate schemes. My father's testimony was just the weapon they used. They destroyed 2 families in one move. Yours through scandal and imprisonment. Mine through forcing us to become the instrument of that destruction. I sank into the chair, my legs suddenly unreliable. "Your father lived with that?" "It killed him. 3 years after your father died, mine put a gun in his mouth." Raffaele's face was carved from shadow and pain. He left a letter. Most of it was incoherent, but one line was clear. "I became the thing I feared to save the thing I loved and lost both anyway." Tears burned behind my eyes. I'd spent 8 years hating the D'Averzano name, by building my entire identity around being the innocent victim of their corruption. But the truth was more complicated, more cruel. We'd both been pawns. Our fathers had been pawns. The real architects of our destruction were still out there, and some of them were surrounding this convent right now. "This doesn't erase what happened," I said finally. "No, Raffaele agreed. But maybe it means we were never really enemies. Just two people caught in the same machine, ground up by the same gears. The weight of the past settled differently now, still heavy, but somehow shared. The crash came at 2 in the morning on the 7th night. Glass shattering, wood splintering, the sound of the refectory window giving way under a crowbar. I bolted upright on my cot, heart hammering, and heard Sister Margarita's scream cut through the darkness. By the time I reached the corridor, Raffaele was already there, moving with lethal grace despite his bandaged shoulder. He'd armed himself with a heavy iron candlestick from the chapel. "Get the sisters to the chapter house," he ordered, his voice carrying the absolute authority of a man who'd commanded dangerous men his entire life. "Now! Lock the door from inside." "You can't. Your injury. Move!" The command snapped me into action. I herded the frightened sisters down the hall, their white nightgowns ghostly in the dim emergency lighting. Mother Superior counted heads while I locked the heavy oak door, my hands shaking. Through the thick wood, we heard shouts, thuds, then silence. Terrible, stretching silence. When Raffaele finally knocked, 3 sharp raps was a pattern he'd told me to listen for. I opened the door to find him bloodied but standing. Behind him, 2 of Teresi's men lay unconscious in the hallway. "They were testing our defenses," he said, breathing hard. "Seeing if we'd fold. Tomorrow they'll come harder." Mother Superior's face was pale but composed. "What do we do?" "We make this place a fortress." Raffaele looked at me. "I need your help, sister. I can't move as well as I should, and I don't know the layout like you do." For the next 3 hours, I followed him through the convent as he assessed every entrance, every window, every weakness. His mind worked like a tactical computer, calculating angles and approaches. He taught me how to barricade doors with furniture positioned for maximum resistance, how to create choke points in the corridors. "No, stack the pews here," he said in the chapel. "Anyone trying to force through will be slowed, exposed. Sister Teresa should prepare the infirmary. We might need it." He paused at the main gate. "And you need to learn how to negotiate with them." "Me? You're a nun. You have moral authority they can't dismiss as easily as they dismiss me." His eyes met mine in the pre-dawn darkness. "Tomorrow, when they call, you answer the phone. You tell them this is holy ground, protected by church law and God's grace. Use words like sacred and sanctuary. Make them remember they were raised Catholic, that their mothers and grandmothers would weep to see them threatening nuns. And if that doesn't work, then you buy time while I figure out our next move." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I've been negotiating with violent men my entire life. Sister, let me teach you." By dawn, I could recite the script he'd written, firm but not aggressive, appealing to conscience while making clear we wouldn't surrender. When the phone rang at 8, my voice didn't shake. Watching Raffaele move through the convent, coordinating our defense with the same brutal competence he'd once used to build an empire, I understood something fundamental had shifted. The supplicant had become our guardian. The wounded man seeking sanctuary was now the shepherd protecting his flock. And somehow, impossibly, I was learning to trust him. The siege settled into a strange routine by the 2nd week. The Teresi family maintained their perimeter, but made no further attempts to breach the walls. We rationed our dwindling supplies carefully: bread, preserved vegetables, water from the well. It was subsistence, but we endured. I found Raffaele in the garden on the 10th morning, kneeling awkwardly in the herb beds with his good arm. He'd rolled up his borrowed sleeves, dirt already under his fingernails. "You should be resting," I said, carrying my basket of weeds. "I've been resting for days. I'm going stir-crazy in that cell." He pulled a stubborn dandelion root, wincing at the movement. "Besides, My mother kept a garden. She used to say working the soil was prayer without words. I knelt beside him, and we fell into companionable silence. There was something meditative about it. The morning sun, the smell of basil and rosemary, the simple task of nurturing life while death waited outside our gates. He moved carefully, favoring his shoulder, but his hands were surprisingly gentle with the plants. "Your mother," I said after a while. "What was she like?" Strong, disappointed, a sad smile touched his lips. "She wanted me to be a doctor. Couldn't understand why I'd choose my father's world instead. She died, still hoping I'd change my mind." That afternoon, I brought books to his cell. Augustine's Confessions, Dante's Inferno, some poetry by Giovanni Pascoli. He devoured them hungrily, and soon our evening visits stretched from quick bandage checks to long conversations over shared meals of bread and cheese. "Do you believe God can forgive anyone?" he asked one night, setting down the battered copy of Augustine. "Anyone at all, regardless of what they've done?" The question hung between us like smoke. I wanted to say yes immediately. It was the foundation of my faith, the reason I'd taken vows. But looking at Raffaele, on thinking of the blood on his hands and the blood on mine, the words caught in my throat. "I want to believe that," I said finally, "but I don't know if I do. Not really. There are some sins that seem too vast for forgiveness. Like mine. Like both of ours." I met his eyes. "I've spent 8 years trying to earn God's grace through obedience and self-denial. Scrubbing away Aneloria Marchetti until only Sister Aneloria remained. But I still don't feel forgiven. I still feel like I'm running." Raffaele leaned back against the stone wall, candlelight carving shadows in his face. "That's the difference between us. You think you need to earn forgiveness. You believe if you pray hard enough, sacrifice enough, bury yourself deep enough, eventually you'll be worthy of grace." He smiled sadly. "I know I never can be. My sins are too many, too deliberate. I've ordered deaths with cold calculation. I've destroyed lives for profit. No amount of penance will balance that scale." "Then why try? Why dismantle your empire if you believe you're beyond redemption?" "Because being beyond redemption doesn't mean I should stop trying to do less harm." He picked up his cup of water, studying it thoughtfully. "Maybe that's what redemption actually is, not erasing what we've done, but choosing differently despite knowing we can never be clean. Living with the weight instead of running from it." His words struck something deep in my chest. For 8 years, I'd been running, hiding, trying to erase, and I was no closer to peace than when I'd started. "You're a heretic," I said softly. "Probably." He smiled. "But I'm an honest one." The Vatican emissary arrived on the 14th day in an unmarked car with diplomatic plates that the Teresi family couldn't legally touch. Monsignor Benedetti was a trim man in his 60s, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too many compromises between heaven and earth. Mother Superior, Raffaele, and I met him in her office, while the other sisters prayed in the chapel. He laid out the proposal with bureaucratic efficiency. "The Holy See has negotiated your extraction, Mr. D'Averzano. Tonight, under cover of darkness, you'll be taken to a safe house. From there, witness protection, new identity, new life, somewhere far from Naples." He folded his hands. "In exchange, you provide testimony against the remaining families. All of them, on complete cooperation." "They'll hunt me forever," Raffaele said quietly. "Yes, but you'll be alive, and your testimony will dismantle organizations that have corrupted this city for generations." Monsignor Benedetti's gaze was unflinching. "The Church considers this a worthy exchange." Raffaele looked at me, something unreadable in his expression. "I need a moment with Sister Aneloria, alone. Mother Superior and the Monsignor exchanged glances, but withdrew. The door clicked shut, leaving us in heavy silence. "Come with me," Raffaele said. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Witness protection. They'll give you a new identity, too. You could leave this place, start over. Actually start over. Not just hide." He moved closer, urgent. "You could have a life, Aneloria. A real one. So not this half-existence behind walls. I have a life. I have vows. You have a cage you built yourself." His voice was gentle but relentless. "You took those vows to hide from living. That's not faith. It's fear. You were 22 years old, grieving and ashamed. And you chose the one path that let you stop existing as a person. That's not true, isn't it?" He gestured at the sparse room, the stone walls. 8 years of your life, gone. No friends, no future. No possibility of anything except prayer and service to a God you're not even sure listens. You said it yourself, you don't feel forgiven. Because forgiveness isn't something you earn by disappearing. It's something you accept by choosing to live despite your failures. Tears burned my eyes. "My vows are sacred." "Your vows are a prison sentence you imposed on yourself." His hand reached toward mine but stopped short. "I'm offering you an escape, a chance to be Aneloria Marchetti again, not the ghost of her. Come with me. We'll both start over. Both choose life instead of penance." For one breathless moment I imagined it, walking out those gates, leaving Sister Aneloria behind like a shed skin, finding some small town where no one knew either of our names, building something new from the ruins. Then I stepped back. I can't. My vows are all I have left. If I break them, I lose the only identity that means anything. That identity is a lie you tell yourself to avoid the truth, that you're still alive, still here, still responsible for choosing what comes next. His voice cracked. "Don't choose this tomb again. Well, please. I'm not choosing a tomb. I'm choosing faithfulness to a commitment I made before God. You're choosing fear." The words were quiet, final. And I understand it. But I can't watch you do it. Monsignor Benedetti knocked twice, and the moment shattered. Raffaele turned away, shoulders set. "Tell them I accept their terms," he said. "I'll testify. I'll leave tonight." He didn't look at me again. The call came at midnight, 3 hours before Raffaele's planned extraction. Mother Superior's hand shook as she held the phone away from her ear, and I could hear the voice on the other end, cold, precise, promising violence. "Dawn," she said after hanging up, her face ashen. "They'll burn the convent at dawn if we don't surrender him. Everyone inside." She looked at each of us gathered in her office. Sister Teresa, Sister Beatrice, me. "They've brought gasoline. They mean it." "The extraction is at 3, I said. "We just need to hold until they know about the extraction." Mother Superior's voice cracked. "Someone leaked it. They've moved up their timeline. It's surrender him now, or watch this sanctuary burn with 20 innocent women inside." The weight of it crushed the air from the room. Sister Beatrice was crying softly. Sister Teresa's weathered hands clutched her rosary with white knuckles. "What do we do?" Sister Beatrice whispered. Mother Superior looked at me. "Sister Aneloria, you've been closest to this situation from the beginning. You understand the stakes better than any of us. What would you do?" The question was impossible. Every answer was wrong. My vow of obedience said to follow Mother Superior's judgment. My vow to serve said to protect my sisters. My faith said to maintain sanctuary. My conscience said to save Raffaele. They all pulled in different directions, tearing me apart. "I don't know," I whispered. Raffaele's voice came from the doorway. "I do." He stood there in his borrowed clothes, his face carved with resignation. "I'll surrender." "Call them. Tell them they can have me." "No," I started. "It's the only way." He looked at Mother Superior. "You've shown me more mercy than I deserved. I won't let you burn for it. Call them." "They'll kill you the moment they have you," I said, my voice breaking. "I know." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But 20 innocent lives for one guilty one? That's not even a difficult calculation." He met my eyes. "You were right to stay, Aneloria. Vows matter. Sanctuary matters. Some things are worth more than survival." Mother Superior reached for the phone, and something inside me splintered. "Wait!" The word tore from my throat. I looked at Raffaele, then at Mother Superior. "There's another way. The catacombs." "The catacombs are sealed," Sister Teresa said. "Not all of them. There's an old passage that leads beyond the walls. It was used during the war. I'd found it years ago during cleaning, told no one. An escape route I'd kept secret even from myself, because acknowledging it meant acknowledging I might need to run again. It's narrow, partially collapsed, but passable. We can get him out." "That would be breaking sanctuary," Mother Superior said quietly, "violating the very law we've defended. The law was meant to protect life, not enable murder." My hands shook. "If we hand him over, we're complicit in his death. If we do nothing, we all burn. But if we help him escape, you'd be choosing to violate your vows," Mother Superior finished. "Yes." The word felt like stepping off a cliff. "I would." Raffaele stared at me. "You said your vows were all you had." "I was wrong." I met his gaze. "Mercy isn't passive. It's not just opening doors and hoping for the best. Sometimes it requires action, even sinful action, even if it costs me everything." Mother Superior studied my face for a long moment, then she nodded. "Show him the way." The entrance to the catacombs was hidden behind a loose stone panel in the wine cellar. I pried it open with shaking hands, while Raffaele watched, his face unreadable in the lamplight. The passage beyond was narrow, smelling of damp earth and centuries of darkness. "Oh, it's about half a kilometer," I said. "There's a collapse halfway through. You'll have to crawl. It opens near the old cemetery, beyond their perimeter. Come with me." His voice was quiet, urgent. "It's not too late." "Yes, it is." I pressed a small package into his hands. Bread, water, the last of our medical supplies. "Monsignor Benedetti will have people waiting at the cemetery. Go, quickly." He caught my wrist, his grip desperate. "Aneloria, go." I pulled away, blinking back tears. "While there's still time." He disappeared into the darkness, and I sealed the panel behind him. Then I walked upstairs to face what came next. The Teresi men arrived at the gates just before dawn, carrying their gasoline cans like trophies. I met them there alone, still in my habit, my rosary wound through my trembling fingers. Behind me, the other sisters watched from the chapel windows. "Where is he?" The leader, a thick-necked man with cold eyes, stepped forward. "Gone." I kept my voice steady, channeling everything Raffaele had taught me. "You're too late, and this is still holy ground. If you burn it, you burn innocent women who've done nothing except uphold church law. Your own mothers would curse you for it." "You think God protects you?" He spat. "You think—" Sirens cut through the morning air. Police cars, many of them, converging from multiple directions. Behind the Teresi men, I saw Monsignor Benedetti emerge from one vehicle, his face grim with satisfaction. "The Vatican has considerable influence with local authorities," he called out, "and considerable interest in protecting its institutions. I suggest you leave before this becomes an international incident." The standoff lasted 3 eternal minutes before the Teresi men retreated, their threats dissolving into impotent rage. I watched them go, my legs barely holding me upright. Mother Superior found me in the chapel an hour later, still kneeling before the altar. She sat beside me in silence, then spoke gently. "You saved his life. You saved all of us. I broke sanctuary. I violated my vows." My voice was hollow. "I'm not worthy to wear this habit anymore." "Perhaps," she touched my hand, "or perhaps you've learned what the rest of us spend lifetimes trying to understand. That faithfulness to the Spirit sometimes means breaking the letter. But the decision isn't mine alone. The Church will have to review your actions." The letter arrived 3 weeks later, a dispensation from my vows, delivered with neither judgment nor approval, just acknowledgement that Sister Aneloria Varelli had chosen a different path. The second letter came with it, forwarded from Raffaele through channels I didn't understand. Inside was a legal document, testimony he'd provided to authorities before entering witness protection, evidence that my father had been coerced, manipulated, made a scapegoat by the same families that had destroyed the D'Averzanos. It wouldn't bring him back, but it restored his name, cleared the shame that had driven me behind these walls. "You gave me sanctuary when I deserved none," his note read. "Let me give you back your father's honor. It's not redemption. Neither of us gets that. But maybe it's enough to let us both stop running." I stood at the convent gates with a single bag, no longer sister, when not yet. Aneloria Marchetti again. Somewhere in between, somewhere new. The morning sun broke through clouds, and I walked forward into it.